So today I'm actually here to talk about something very near and dear to me, which is modern security operations and the challenges. So the vendors we bring together, it's not a coincidence. Cisco's before, during, after pitch really works. I've been using the Firepower since its Snort days. I can know for firsthand to see how powerful that can be in an organization. And then likewise, AlienVault's USM technology layered on top of it provides additional visibility and additional control. But I think you guys all believe that technology works and there's solutions to problems, yeah? But the problem is how do you actually do it? How do you orchestrate it? How do you run your business? How do you actually have someone there to look at what you're doing? And likewise, how do you convince your management in times of a very tight budget that this is actually a meaningful expense? So today I'm going to talk about a bit about my background, since we had a brief time before, and some of the challenges, maybe give you guys some ammunition on how you want to talk, and then ways that you can go back and think about how to run security operations in your own business. So a bit about myself. If you can't guess by my accent, I am American. I have never worked in the United States. I bought a one-way ticket when I was 20, when I graduated university. I briefly worked in Europe, but I worked with some Taiwanese guys, and that sounded like a good idea, so I've been in Asia for around 10 years now. Primarily focused, I think the reason I bring up this slide always is I'm a bit unique in that I've worked in all aspects of it. My background is trained as a cryptographer and a computer scientist, so I was working as a vendor, as an architect, designing software, designing security solutions. And then I moved over into a customer role where we're implementing them into our environment, dealing with vendors and trying to evaluate which is the most rational way. And then finally, I've worked in NTT and other large service providers running large SOCs, large security operations that have to scale, that have to be well orchestrated and have to do a lot of business. I think you can guess my interest just if you want to talk to me on the side. Primarily, I'm a programmer by trade. I am a mathematician by background. I've been involved with Bitcoin since it was $8. I've been programming on Solidity. Primarily what I work with on Ethereum is decentralized trust, so ways to secure businesses and do trust by using smart contracts, so how to share encryption and stuff like that. Also ways to improve ISO 27001 compliance through a decentralized mean. But the one is the most interesting and I like to talk about today when we talk about the evolving face of security is social engineering. Social engineering fascinates me. We talk about the changing face of security, and I don't know if you saw, there was an old movie in the 80s or 90s, Hackers, and you picture these guys, I'm doing all my code, I'm getting in, and no, it's nothing like that. Now I visited malware teams in Xiamen, I've visited malware teams in Yerevan, which is in Armenia. It's a bunch of bros hanging out, playing Counter-Strike, relaxing, and sending these things out, and you're just sending them money. They've realized that, why do I need to go against this best-in-breed technology because people aren't using it right? I can get in the back, I can do whatever I want. So that's what we're talking about, this changing face of security. I mean, ransomware is fascinating to me because I studied it in university. I've studied it at a graduate level. I understand it implicitly, and I'm so surprised at how quickly you've seen it. It's exponentially increasing, over $1 billion in damages in 2016. You've seen ransomware growing at a yearly rate of 350% because it's amazing. You write it, you throw it out there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't communicate back with the home server. It doesn't need anything. I just throw it out there and I can write a smart contract in Ethereum to automate the repayment. It's just free money to them. And you've seen it, you no longer see Prince Jubari of Nigeria asking for money. You see people asking you to log in and click on something. They're targeting you. They know that, okay, you're browsing something funny at work and you pick up a suspicious tracing cookie. They realize that, oh, okay, you're actually working in this company and you're doing something with RSA. So then suddenly you get a spear phishing email. Hey, here's your quote for the RSA project we're working on. And you click on that and it's tailored for you. You can do it on a script. I can set up web pages on a script. I can get you to run a campaign targeted for you and be down and out very quickly, days. They're agile, they're really fast. And the problem we've always had is that, especially in Asia, it's always been a technology focus and a cost focus, and it's not been holistic kind of view. So we see a problem and we go, okay, is there some kind of technology that we can throw at it? Then we have a big tender, we jump up and down, we buy a lot of stuff, then we get it. Then we still get hacked and we wonder why, because operations is something that, not just Asia, across the world is really not well thought of, people don't consider it. So I'll give you an example of it. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with anything about phishing, but one of the things that phishing is used to is phish credentials. So they say, okay, you log into this fake website, then they get your password, then they spread across the network. That's what happened in the SMU hack last year. That's what happened in many major hacks are literally just credentials being stolen. So then we had this big idea, okay, everything is going to have two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication, well, we'll have SMS, we'll have email. I mean, even playing video game at home, I have to verify on email that I'm actually the person playing. And we thought this was a great idea. It's like, yeah, and then everyone walks away. Okay. Actually, last week during the Black Hat event in Las Vegas, hackers have already found a way around it. So what's very interesting, these slides will be shared. You can read the links about it. This is a YubiKey. It's not as common in Singapore, but in China and in the US, it's an open source hardware dongle, and it's nearly impossible to break. It's a wonderful tool. So what did the guy realize he could do? Okay, why am I going to try to break it? What I can do is I can make a fake. This one, if I stick it into a computer, I stick it into my server, it's recognized as a YubiKey. He made this fairly quickly using, you can see it's an etched circuit board, nothing great. Then he 3D printed the case for it and put it together, and he was passing it out at RSA, and he was, or not RSA, Black Hat, and he was able to prove that he can capture stuff. It sends a signal back and provides the secret, so that all I need to do is make another one and copy it, and I can start doing the authentication. He didn't just do this with this YubiKey. RSA tokens. There's already a proof of concept of an RSA token. Looks like an RSA token. Smells, probably tastes like an RSA token. But it's not an RSA token. Even the RSA server is tricked by it. So when you think about this, that's where we go back to social engineering, why it's fascinating. Why do I need to do this? I can set up some small shop front, and I can start selling these at a really low price. I can look very great. I can hand them out to you free at events. And you think, oh man, I'm getting something great. I'm getting something great too. It's wonderful. So, but that's where you see, like, this is where it's changed. And then we're compounding the issue is that we're understaffed here. So you're dealing with these agile guys who are young, they're hungry, and a lot of times they're poor and really depend on getting this kind of money to support themselves. So they have all the time in the world, they have all the incentive, and usually your IT team has 2 people. We have a customer who is one of the largest semiconductor firms in the world, 10,000 employees, 1 security guy. You have fabrication plants, 1 fabrication plant, around $3 billion US, 1 security guy for all of them. So you see, like, you're seeing this rapidly advancing technology. So of course, in the old solution, we buy all of these tools. We say, okay, we're going to get the IPS, we're going to get the firewall, we're going to get the SIEM, we're going to get the DLP. And on this checklist, you have this wonderful library of cool tools you can use. But your one guy doesn't know how to use it. 5 days, okay, we all have been to vendor training. We all know it's just 5 days of really good lunches. Like, let's be honest. Like, you learn to use a tool by studying it, by being in the field and learning about it. And it's too hard to do. And then finally, all of these tools produce copious amounts of information. So I have one customer, I never will mention them because they're dear to me, but when I first went to them, they had a Palo Alto firewall, and it was being used as an IPS and sitting in the back. They had turned off all notifications on it because it was generating too many emails, because their lean IT team couldn't look at it. So on paper, you look at it, maybe $20 million IT estate. They had no idea what's going on. It doesn't matter if you have a tool that says, I can get your time to detection in 5 minutes if no one's looking at it. So this is one of the biggest issues. And then the other one that's really nasty is the regulatory focus. Has anyone read the full cybersecurity bill in Singapore? Have you all submitted your request for comment? I sent an essay to the government because it's cute. So anyways, if you don't know, basically, if you're in any kind of industry that is critical, there is no difference between public and private networks to the government anymore. If you're running critical infrastructure, the cybersecurity agency czar has authority to get you to disclose. You're going to have to be showing what you did wrong, and you're subject to a lot more regulatory oversight. You're seeing trends like ISO 27001, HIPAA, PCI DSS. These are spreading all around the world, and they're viral. So suddenly, you're previously, like the old ABS guidelines, you're a bank. You need to have the MAS, the ABS compliance, yeah? You're printing the checks for the bank. Now you need to be under this. So what it's changed is like it's very hard for staff, because now you need staff who understand these agile threats. You need staff who can know all of the technical expertise of your platform. And you need staff that understand the complete business needs and soft skills and regulatory impact of everything they do. It's an issue. It's not just a Singapore issue. So if you read the latest paper from the Cybersecurity Agency, Singapore is facing a shortage of around 10,000 cybersecurity professionals by 2021, which doesn't seem that big of a number, but to put it in a better context, In the US, there's 780,000 current security professionals with 350,000 openings. And by 2021, globally, there's going to be a shortage of 3.5 million security professionals. As security professionals, you know, it's a well-paid job and you're mobile. So as business leaders in Singapore or business leaders in Malaysia, Indonesia, wherever you're working, you're competing, you have the same requirements, you have the same technology requirements, the same skill requirements, and the same risk as someone in the Valley or someone sitting in Berlin or someone sitting in Russia, but you're competing for the same incredibly small headcount, fewer headcount. And it's caused a pretty big issue. So where I come in and I communicate is you're being attacked from all angles. So you have the evolving threats. You have increased time required to detect threats because of the overhead. So you need people to do it, but you can't find the people because they either don't exist or they're asking for a lot of salary. So one story I like to tell to like humble people is when I first moved to Singapore, I learned about ITE, and a lot of my friends would always joke about ITE. It's the end. You know, it's quite an absurd thing. So we're all laughing now. The highest paid security professional I know in Singapore makes well over $25,000 a month, an iTech grad. Failed all the Singapore system, balling at computer science, got picked up, and now he runs his own private consultancy firm. So I mean, even the lower end where you would think that, oh, I can transfer this, I don't need a Unigrad or Poly, it doesn't matter. In security, it's security. If someone can do it, whether they're from NUS or they're just school leavers, as long as they have the background, they're commanding the same salary and you're seeing this kind of risk to your business. How do you do it? So the first is you have to think about how you're doing incident handling. And this is one, it seems very simple. You prepare, you set your defenses. Then when the attack comes, you can identify it. You can figure out where it is, what the impact is, so you can contain it. And then afterwards, you recover and you fix it, and that completes the cycle where you're preparing it and around. Singapore is very good at preparation, like to buy stuff. Singapore is very great at recovery and analysis. We like to find out what happened so we can blame someone else. We are terrible at this. I mean, it's not like there's not been a lot of thought. Like IT in particular has not evolved as fast as the financial services industry, as the medical, as the biotechnical, because previously it was just thought of, you know, you're a CIO, your career is over. Now it's an integral part of the business. So you got to think like how you're doing this. So of course, this part is an operational challenge. How do you do it? How do you find the people? How do you set it up? So I mean, it's the people, process, and the platform. The process is the tricky part. You define it on yourself. The people and the platform are more what I can help you with. So that's where we looked in technology for incident response. So during Greg's presentation, you saw him talk about SIEM. And some of you might be the first time you've ever seen a SIEM or seen what it does. SIEM is very interesting. It doesn't tell you what's wrong in a network. It tells you what's unusual in a network. It's a holistic kind of environment. You send all of your logs, all your telemetry, all of your data in. You teach it what is on your network and what is normal, and it finds abnormalities. So how do I explain it a bit better? We call this the next-gen firewall blind spot. So this is a typical business network, especially in the smaller networks. You'll have a two-layer, maybe a DMZ or firewall, your servers up there. But then you have a relatively flat topology inside of the network where users are accessing resources and doing everything like this. So what you have to understand is the way a next-gen firewall works is that they're either threshold-based, oh, too many logins after X seconds, or they're signature-based, hey, this traffic follows the pattern of something before it. Clear. But modern APTs are compromising without using signatures. Like if I exploit John's laptop outside of the network. So I'm in Starbucks or in China, if I'm on a public Wi-Fi, you're constantly being hacked. And I come back into my network. How does the firewall know that John accessing the network to his cybersecurity business files is not someone, Chinese guy wearing John's hat sneaking in and through it? You don't know how to do it. You need something to protect it. You need some more visibility. And a lot of it, the Cisco products do go a long way for it because they keep a record of what's happened. So that's that whole before, during, after. It's a wonderful message. And on top of that, what you can add is SIEM to orchestrate it. So that's why we put them together. Like the SIEM can orchestrate and control this kind of platform like the Cisco's platform. But what SIEM does differently is behavioral analysis. Users are connected into the platform. So when an analyst is looking, they don't only see the alarm that comes up, they say who did it, what else have they been doing, and it allows them to determine if there's an indication of compromise is actually a threat. And then anomaly detection. So you're mostly familiar with baselining, but baselining is usually a threshold-based analysis. In this kind of baseline, you actually write correlation logic on top of the rules that exist to teach the system what is normal, to teach it what is abnormal, so that it can create alarms where there's no signature, where there's nothing in place. And so that lets you basically get a lot of control over your network and a lot of visibility, but it drastically decreases your workload. And how much? So this is from a real customer I was working on. Their estate generates 10,000 events per second, so roughly 10,000 logs per second. So when I set up the SIEM, we can actually corner off a portion of it, and we only need about 5,000 events per second to do proper security analysis. Certain logs just have no value for security. Out of this, you have around 750, which are very critical type of incidents, that these 750 will be put into 2 or 3 incidents. So these 750 EPS worth of logs will come into around 2 to 3 incident. So without SIEM or without any kind of orchestration, this is where we went into before. The user has all the good tools, but suddenly you're getting 10,000 emails a second or 10,000 notifications. Whereas if you get down to this point, you're getting 2 to 3 incidents per day. You're seeing what's going on. And in that incident, it's less noisy. All of the distractions are gone, but it's also enriched. It means that when you're looking at it, you have all the information you need to analyze it and make a decision for your business. That lets you identify, and then that lets you make your containment and your corrective action plan. But the downside for SIEM, and this is one that's usually overlooked, is that it requires expertise to operate. So one of the weird facts is like the average age of an analyst in Singapore is around 21 because of the NS now has a service where you can go do cybersecurity for your NS. The problem is that these tools like you would say like ArcSight is very complicated. $1 you spend on ArcSight, you spend $3 configuring the thing. They're not tools meant for people who don't know security. They're meant for people who understand what they're doing to help them orchestrate the rest of their business. It also requires someone to be monitoring the system. I mean, you can do it at night shift or you can have it email. It doesn't matter if it's emailing you within 1 or 2 seconds of an incident happening if no one's looking at it. And relatively speaking, if you have not detected an incident within 15 minutes, a lot of damage can already be done. And then it requires constant tuning and maintenance. And this is where we talk about proactive security. Your network is always changing. There's always stuff, new patches or new technology, new users, new servers, restructuring. You have to keep your SIEM up to date. If I take the SIEM and put it into the box and sit it there, it'll have no idea what your network is doing, and suddenly you'll see more noise or you'll see less meaningful incidents. And so this comes at a cost. And so the platforms are there, but then you come into the people. And so what does it cost? So from my experience in running SOCs in Singapore especially, if I'm running it, the blended average, so this is blended average, meaning I am running a 4-tier, you're talking around minimum salary of around 5,500 a month, plus your CPF. Even if you hire foreigners, the foreigners are not stupid. They're going to want some of this surplus themselves. Your allowances, your night shifts, so you get around a blended average of around $7,000 per month per head count. But you want 24/7. If you run out the math on a 12-hour schedule, it's 5.4 people. You can't hire, 2/5 of a person, so you need 6. And this covers your redundancy. This covers your holidays, your leave, and this is the number you need to run a stable operation. So you're talking around 42,000 a month, and then adds up to around 500,000 per year just on people. And that's before you look at your hardware costs, and it's before you look at other stuff. The other stuff being, I had one customer that I worked with, they set up a 24-hour SOC in their office tower, but they don't have individual air conditioners in their unit. They use the central cooling tower. They learned that you have to pay a lot of money to run the cooling tower at night. So all of these add up, and that's where we're running into the challenges, because there's obviously a demand for security. I think Singapore market in general, the world understands that it's more than just buying technology, but how do you get to that next part? And that's where MSSPs like Logicalis help. So this is to explain what we do and how we come into it. MSSPs act as your security partner. So what we do is we've incurred the expense. We have our 24-hour teams. In Logicalis, we have advanced analyst teams in Singapore and Taiwan, and we have our ancillary local language support around the region. So 24/7 by 365, we have someone looking at this technology and working on the technology who knows what they're doing. But the SLA is the biggest part. So when we sign the SLA, we guarantee if we see an incident come in, within 5 minutes of it coming into the system, we're calling someone in your business. Within 15 minutes, we're giving you a recommendation of how critical it is. Within 30 minutes, we're doing an initial incident report, and we're helping you get through that way. We sit on top of the Cisco platform, your perimeter security, your SIEM. We're the ones doing the proactive monitoring, maintenance, and tuning. And that's where we also sit in. So we assign account managers. Every day they come in, they look at what are the trends on your network, they prepare your monthly reports, and they help to tune. They set your network up not your network, they set the SIEM solution to maximize the value for you. But finally, and especially for smaller businesses, is that we supply the SIEM on a OpEx model. So everything is one offered flat monthly fee. And typically for a small business and small and medium enterprise in Singapore, it costs much less than the cost of a single headcount. So that's where we really can start to see ourselves excelling. We can come into the business, we offer our expertise, we outsource a lot of that work that you might not be familiar with, but there's still value for you because you're free from making the tactical decisions. Oh, what is wrong? Is this a problem? Instead, you have meaningful intelligence and you can focus on being strategic managers, focus on the bigger picture of your business. And then likewise, most of us, including Logicalis, we are backed up by consultants. So we have a consultancy practice who does vulnerability assessment, penetration testing for our customers on a proactive basis. We dig deep on the network. We are able to send people to the boardroom to present and to show off what we do. So this is what a Logicalis, like an MSSP does, and that's the role that they fit in. It's less of, it's an outsourcing relationship, but it's more of a partnership. Our account managers sit on some of our customers' CERT teams that they file with the MAS. So we end up in this relationship where we're constantly finding your problems, helping you develop, and then in the end, it actually saves cost, because if you have all of the intelligence on your network, and you know what's going on, and you know what your risk is, and you have this transparency, then when you're asking for budget, you know what tools you need, and you know what cost you need. You can read this later. This is the Logicalis Advantage. It's our marketing slide, but we are part of a global organization. We have centers of excellence in Singapore, the Channel Islands, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Most of you here probably have heard of Logicalis. We do fairly large projects. We're able to execute from the board level downwards. So we have consultants who can come in and communicate. The discussion will start off as a discussion about risk and take it down to the engineer, to a change plan, a management plan, a corrective and preventative action plan. So when working with Logicalis, we are able to hold your hand across the entire business. So that's all for me. I will be back 2 more times. I don't have any presents this time, but I would have a little bit of time. If anyone has a question, I would be happy to answer. So, I talked to you about what we do. I talked to you about security. I talked to you about running a good operation. But for us, our customers are the DNA of our business. And quite frankly, I prefer to show rather than tell. So today I've been so privileged, Mr. Suli Tan, who's the senior manager at Bridge Alliance for IT, he's one of our MSS customers, and he's come on board, and through the partnership with the Logicalis SOC, he's been able to handle all of his compliance requirements and improve his cybersecurity posture with no capital expenditure and fairly low operational increased expenditure. So I'm very privileged today to invite him here. So please give him another round of applause. So Suli, I think a good way to start would be can you give us a brief description of Bridge Alliance?
Sure. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. So good morning or good afternoon to everyone here in the room. So I'm Suli from Bridge Alliance. So Bridge Alliance is, as you know, is an entity formed by a group of regional mobile operators. It started operation about 12 years ago. The main purpose of its formation is to allow the operators to collaborate better in certain strategic areas like the roaming, the enterprise services, regional enterprise services, as well as even in the area of IoT. So as of today, we have about 34 member operators in the alliance. Right.
Okay, great. And then can you share a bit more about so as a union and an alliance of regional tier 1 providers, what are some of your business needs and what are some of the security challenges that you face?
Right. Before I get into that, John, I think maybe it's good for me to say a little about the IT setup of Bridge Alliance, so that it can bring some context into our discussion later. So we have a small and lean IT team, or we consider ourselves an SME, right? So we are hosting services both in the cloud and also on-prem for our member operators as well as the end customer of our member operators. So coming back to the question of our IT needs, right? So as far as information security is concerned, it always centered around the best practice of better protection, better detection, and better response, right? So coming to this protection part, we think we've done quite far. We've gone quite far in terms of securing our perimeters, right? We have introduced IT security policies, so on and so forth. On the detection side, we are always on our toes, right? Trying to find out what solutions, what technologies, or what resources that we need to invest in, right, in order to better detect or monitor the incoming threats to our IT networks. So if you looked at the technology side, right, there are a lot of solutions in the marketplace. Take, for example, the SIEM, which John has talked about just now. SIEM is a good product. It can easily get a company off to a good start along the track of achieving better detection, right? But the cost of ownership of a SIEM could be quite steep for SME like us, right? So not only that, you have to think about putting in resources, a skill and train resource to tune and retune the SIEMs, right, on a constant basis, right? So to get rid of all the noises, the false positive and false negative, right? So once you're able to get good alerts, meaningful alerts coming out from the system, you also need to put in place resources to monitor on the 7 by 24 hours basis, right? So to us, the requirements on the resources is a much bigger challenge, right? So bringing back that into the context of company, it just makes a lot of sense for us to outsource the monitoring and the detection activities, right, to MSS provider who are specializing and focusing on doing just that, right? So so the question of whether we want to build or we want to outsource, that decision become very obvious.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess for the audience, when you made the decision, can you walk through like how did you set up your selection criteria? How did you go through the evaluation criteria? Like what were the steps you took and roughly a time frame of where you went from, this is something I need to outsource to I'm signing a PO and I've selected a managed security service provider. Can you walk the audience through this?
Yeah, John. So for us, having satisfied ourselves with decision to outsource, so the very first thing is to get our management buy-in, right? That is very important. So we get the budget set aside. We form a small team to issue a RFP, and then start evaluating the potential MSS providers. So in the evaluation process, right, I think there are a number of aspects which one should think about, right? First, right, in terms of the data, right, the data that the vendors need to extract out from your system to do the monitoring. You probably want to ask the vendor about, whether the data will there be a confidential or will there be private information that is going to be extracted out, right? If there is, then you need to ask about how the vendor is going to safeguard it, right? And also for those of you who have to be abided by, the rules of regulation, where the data cannot flow out of a country. I mean, some of you might have to encounter facing that. So you do need to ask your vendor where are they going to keep the data, right? Where are they going to store the data, and how long are they going to store the data, right? Secondly, for those of you who are also thinking about outsourcing the device management, so getting the vendor to manage or configure your firewall, router, and stuff. So you have to think about how much of the IT control you're going to concede, right? Then the question of about the SOCs, right? Do you need to have a local SOCs, or are you comfortable with working with a remote SOCs, which probably is half a globe away, right? So that is probably the key question you need to ask for the vendors. Fourth, I think there's more important for us from our experience is that always, as far as possible, you ask for a POC, proof of concept, from the vendors. So through the POC deployment, a lot of things can be reviewed, right? So you will be able to judge for yourself, for example, right? How easy or how painful it is, right, to integrate the vendor solution into your environment, right? So the brochure is always beautiful and glossy, simple deployment in days or minutes, but the actual the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? So the next one, you are able to also see for yourself the MSS dashboard. I mean, if you are going through the POC, the dashboard for me is very important because this is going to be the key interface that I'm going to look at the alarms, alerts, and extract information to do my reports. So you have to make sure that the MSS dashboard is what you are comfortable with, right? And also with the POC, right, you got to interact with the security engineers, the security analysts from the vendors. So this will be the group of people that you're going to interact day in and day out, right? Should the vendor get selected, and it will become part of your IT processes. So you have to make sure that this group of people are the people you are comfortable working with, right? So recap, we have talked about the flowing of data, right? The IT control, the SOCs, and conducting POC. Last but not least, I think as far as possible, also get a copy of a sample of the agreement and SLA from the vendors, right? We get your legal team involved to look at the SLA and agreements. Look at what are the services guarantees. Look at what is involved if there is a change request required, and also look at what are the exit clause, right? So it's better to have mutual understanding on this topic upfront, right? on this, right? So for our case, John, from the beginning of RFP to at the end with selecting a vendor, it took us about slightly more than 2 months. Mm-hmm. So what I think is that as long as you set out the requirement early part in the game, then the downstream process will be quite smooth.
Okay. And now that you've been, so you've had some time with our service now, and you've outsourced your SOC and your IT and security monitoring, can you share some of the changes, the benefits, or any observations you've had on your network, and what has been different about, and what is Bridge Alliance seen?
Yeah, certainly we have made a big jump in terms of our company security posture by having a partner to monitor our networks on a 7/24 basis. So our IT team, I mean, they are small, but they can look at other more important things, right? And for a few months now, we have been receiving quite a meaningful and insightful alerts from the system. From there, we can recognize that there are areas that we need to improve on. The monthly report that we receive as well, that is a very good digest for us to do the management reporting as well. We have also done the vulnerability assessment, so that was an eyes opener. So Now we understand what we didn't discover in the beginning and what we are not aware of in the beginning, and there are areas that we still need to keep working on. So I think overall we are very happy with the progress, and I think we can achieve much more in the later phase.
Great. And I'm very happy that you were able to come and share with us today, and you've had a positive outcome with our service. So please, one more hand for Mr. Sulitan.
My pleasure.
So we have a few minutes left, and of course, we have an interviewer on stage. It's a chance for you guys as fellow business leaders, fellow managers, fellow decision makers. If you'd like to ask Mr. Suli Mr. Tan some questions about the process, he would be happy to answer. Just to be ahead of, if there are questions that are sensitive, he will not be able to give full details because of the confidentiality of his business. So does anyone have any question about the process or would like to talk?
Yeah, first is for Mr. Tan and second is for you.
Okay.
Could you share some major or one of the unique use case that you have or use cases that you have that you decided to go with Logicalis instead of the other so many products?
You mean products or vendors?
Yeah. What are the use cases? Because you said you mentioned about POC. So I think what from my perspective is you did some POC against Logicalis to the other. So what made you decide to go with Logicalis?
So our main intention of issuing the RFP, right, is to get a service provider to monitor our networks, right? So monitoring detection part is the key thing we want to achieve in the RFP. So we conducted a few POCs. Okay, there are some requirement I have to say upfront about the RFP there. One of the key requirement is that we need to have local SOCs, right? We don't want to talk to SOCs which are far away from us because we need to have a close interaction. So one of the key selection criteria is local SOCs, and also the where the collected data is going to be stored, right? So it has to be in country. You cannot flow out of Singapore. So that was the main consideration. So in the POC, okay. So we are able to see the solution from Logicalis. Easy integration is one of the things which actually amazes us, right? We are able to form a conference call that we're going to start the POC, and basically we can get the whole thing up and running within probably less than a week.
Less than a week.
Less than a week. So, but with other vendors. I mean, the POC, even 2 months later, it hasn't got started off. So that kind of integration is key for us. And there are also many others factors. In pricing, certainly one of them.
Of course.
So at the end, we feel quite comfortable working with Logicalis, and that was the main decision that led us to them.
And your second question?
Yeah, John, I was not able to ask you this earlier, but is Logicalis, if any solution of Logicalis is able to integrate with ICS or SCADA?
So we can have someone reach out to you directly. The Alien Vault has SCADA monitoring built into it. And then you have to understand from the SOC perspective, we bring technologies into the portfolio. So we have portfolio stuff to do SCADA monitoring and then SCADA vulnerability testing through another vendor. So we do have experience on this. Some of our customers outside of the country are on industrial control systems, and we're in a successful POC with them already. But SCADA is a very broad thing because it was not very standardized. So you can reach out to us and we'd be happy to have a discussion. And then if you're at the Alien Vault Alien Vault demo later today, they have Matt is in from the US, and he's quite experienced with it as well, so he can talk you through the specifics of how it works on the Alien Vault platform. Okay. 2 good questions. Do we have more? Does he get 2 bags?
Thank you.